Dial Models Workshop.
Hi, it's Yeji.
And Clint.
Hey, it's Larry. You are entering Models Workshop After Hours, a modeling podcast where we talk about miniatures, model painting, and we cuss a lot. If you can be offended, we're probably going to offend you. Then you're going to laugh, and you're going to feel bad. And then we'll offend you again, and then you'll laugh again. You see the pattern. So kick out, sit back, grab your brush, grab your paints, and get ready to have some fun.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Models Workshop After Hours. We are on episode 101, I believe, of the U.S. side of things. And today, Larry's been feeling sick. Clint's off playing games with his boys, and we have a kind of a light crew. We have Chris. He's a new probie lurking in the background. He's trying to get his mic fixed so we can hear him. And we are joined by Jim.
Hey there.
And we have a guest that we met over at ReaperCon. He goes by Mark Norton, and he runs Frozen Ninja 3D.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Welcome. And so we were kind of... he has a couple of new things coming up here in October, so we thought we'd have him over on the podcast, and so we invited him and kind of go from there. But what have you folks been doing this week?
I'll let Mark go first because he's the guest.
Yeah, I've just been getting ready for the Kickstarter, pretty much trying to wrap up all the loose ends and get all the planning nailed down. So that's pretty much what I'm all up to nowadays. So, yeah.
How long before a Kickstarter do you get prepared for? And, like, is this your first, second, millionth?
This will be the third Kickstarter I've ran, but the second one that I've done for figures that I've designed and sculpted myself. So I usually start planning for it about 8 months in advance. Just, starting to get all the planning together and making sure everything's in line. So it's a big thing to run a Kickstarter. So just want to get everything lined up. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, we've heard the horror stories of the Kickstarter, so
yeah.
Definitely know and understand. I mean, Jim, right before we started, Jim was talking about how he has the I Survived. What was it, Jim?
I Survived my Kickstarter 2013 T-shirt, the official one. And we have one for Justin because Kickstarters, they take a minimum of at least 5 years off your life. So, Mr. Norton, you ain't got long to live.
Nope. Heading out.
Best make good use of the time you got.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty well prepared, so we'll see. It's a lot of work. I really like all the excitement that it generates. So I'm looking forward to all that.
I think it's almost like, let's just don't tell people how old I am, but back in Boy Scout days, used to have to know how to build a bomb shelter, because that was part of your citizenship and the Nation Merit Badge. And bomb shelters are really handy for Kickstarters. Survival, like cans, MREs, and all that kind of stuff, and water just down in your basement, locked out from the world. It's a perfect thing for a Kickstarter.
Yep.
Especially those last 48 hours.
Yeah, the last 48 is pretty stressful.
Is it because you see the ups or the downs and all that stuff?
Well, it's that last 48. It's it's going to be the most important time of the whole Kickstarter because it is for every single one. But you've been up all night, depending on how long your Kickstarter is. You've been up all night every day because people use your comment section as their own private chat room, and anything announcement you try and make, it's buried by all these comments that mostly mean absolutely nothing. So nobody's getting the news, but everybody is saying, why is there no news? This is bad. This Kickstarter is terrible because there's no information.
Yeah.
There would be if you would just stop typing.
Yeah, you have to search through all the messages to find the one person that asked a question and make sure you answer that question directly. Otherwise, they feel like you're ignoring them.
And then you have the why in the world, okay, we just cleared a stretch goal, and now all of a sudden we just lost $2,000. And now do you just, do we keep with that stretch goal? Because we cleared it, now we just uncleared it. But if you take that stretch goal away, you're just going to make people mad.
Yeah, and it'll go down even more.
And some people do actually take delight in pledging and canceling and pledging again 4, 5, 12 times during the course of the campaign.
Well, I don't know if it's a delight, but like I've done it before. Like, oh no, I can't afford it, and then oh wait, I just got a commission. Now yes, I can. So like I've done that before.
Well, what you find out is there's a Kickstarter community, because fortunately with us, it was the early days. So 5 years ago, basically the community, they went from the Kingdom Death Kickstarter, and within the first 10 hours of ours, they had already established a little chat room. They were still talking about the Kingdom Death Kickstarter in ours.
In yours? Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, because it's all the same core group of people that just go from one Kickstarter to the next.
Yeah, that's true.
And they start having conversations with each other. And again, at least I wanted to say 10% of the comments in our Kickstarter had nothing to do with our Kickstarter whatsoever. That's a lot to search through. But sorry to get so off track with all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting to know, because I really didn't have very many comments in my last Kickstarter. So I was placing comments trying to get people more interested and for them to make comments. But it's interesting to hear that people come over from other Kickstarters and do that.
It sort of benefited us because, well, that big Kickstarter finishes and people all said, well, has anybody ever painted a Kingdom Death figure? And fortunately, I had painted one, and it was on my blog. So all of those folks, they came over to the Kickstarter because, well, they thought they might be able to now get some painting videos to teach them how to actually paint these Kingdom Death things that they had just spent many hundreds of dollars on.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of the plus side of the community. It again, this was before a Kickstarter had to make $2 million in the first 3 minutes to be successful.
Yeah.
It kind of was still what it was meant for before it was a pre-order mechanism.
Oh my God.
So that we kind of benefited from those kind of the early days, and now it's so much harder.
Yeah, nowadays I'm pretty much paying for the 3D prints and the molding, and so I can have resin casts in hand to show prior to the Kickstarter. Otherwise, it doesn't seem like anybody's really that interested.
For us, the first thing everybody said was, well, where's the samples of videos? And I said, well, if you would wish to, before the Kickstarter ends, buy us the camera, the $4,000 worth of computers, the $1,000 worth of multi-terabyte backup drives now, that'd be great. Then you could see all the sample videos you want, but that's kind of, it was in the stated purpose of the Kickstarter was, this is what we're using to buy all this equipment so that we can make the videos. But there were those that they were insisting, well, I want to see them now. We said, we don't have a camera. We certainly don't have computers that have the power to actually make these things. And even now, the computers that we use then are not powerful enough to do what we're doing now with all of the streaming stuff and everything else. So we've had to replace those since then.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
Well, I'm sure you're using some pretty heavy-duty machines doing the digital sculpting too.
Yeah, my machine is pretty nice. I've amped up the RAM a little bit, so I think I need to probably replace it in about a year. So I'll be looking at something new.
Well, now does the software update often enough that you just, oh, holy smokes, what was working great 6 months ago just now starts to lag?
No, it doesn't really update that often. But they did do a large update just a couple months ago. And so basically with that, I saw everything slow down.
Okay. I was wondering about that because I see, while we were at ReaperCon, we're all going to be talking about that because I think we all had a decent time at that place.
Oh, yeah.
And, obviously you got all the Reaper sculptors, and there's the cadre of them all working in ZBrush, kind of huddled together. And I remember at one point they were using like a Surface Pro with that. Now that's got to be a souped up Surface Pro to be doing 3D sculpting on with ZBrush and stuff on that.
Yeah, that's what I use when I travel as a Surface Pro. But I don't really like the sensitivity as much as on my normal tablet. So I actually carry a separate tablet with me to use with it.
Yeah, I've only tried to play around with that software just a few times when people let me just do some mayhem, just press buttons. And it seems it's a pretty tough thing to keep track of just where you are. And I've seen them use the brush where it's, okay, I can take this normal human face and with this texture brush now turn it into a scaled lizard man face.
Uh-huh.
But I never got to that point. I never got to the fun stuff like that. Is there a lot of building that happens before you can do that?
Before you add the textures and stuff?
Yeah.
Basically, I try to add the textures last because once you start adding the textures, it's harder to manipulate certain things. So I try to do that last as kind of the final detailing.
And apparently, what the Reaper guys told me, that unlike the old days of, say, Lightwave, way back in Amiga 2000 times, where geometric shapes were the easiest thing and organic was almost impossible, just looking at your busts and everything, there's lots of organic shapes there, and it seems like you were able to get those done really, really well. Is that just a really hard thing to do? It seems to be that. One of the things when I was first learning was that they were teaching me how to really make the shapes look realistic by not having the edges in the wrong spots and stuff like that. So that is something I really take a long time to look at, is all the edges and all the shapes, and if there's a flat spot in somewhere where it shouldn't be, or those sorts of things. Because it's so easy for us to spot a ZBrush done sculpt, usually because in the more organic shapes, the cloth, the hair, you just see these artifacts.
Yeah.
And when people they're either maybe not aware of it or they're newer to it and they just don't know how to get rid of that. To me, it seems like it's really hard to control that.
Yeah, it is. But that's one of the things I like about ZBrush is you can really zoom in and make sure everything is kind of flows perfectly, and it's really nice just to zoom in and be able to change little things, then zoom back out, kind of view it in real size and see your changes, then zoom back in, make more changes. It's kind of fun to do that kind of stuff.
Because I was getting lost just in the orientation of my viewing angle, because again, I was used to the more drafting type perspective, the 3-view perspective, and now I'm in this basically a 3-dimensional space, moving the object around, rotating it on axis and everything, and boy, it was difficult. So when anybody can master that, I say, oof, hey, I am very impressed.
Yeah, it took a long time to get used to that, but yeah, I actually have a couple tricks that I do now just to keep everything within the viewing space. So
it seems like the response at ReaperCon was really good, especially since ReaperCon practically doubled their attendance over last year.
It was a really nice space. I mean, that helped, I think.
I think the big key, and this is something that we noticed, I lost track at 18 or 19 people that said this was their first ReaperCon, because I kept making all these references to last year, the year before, the old days. They said, I've never been here before. And a lot of people, actually, they weren't necessarily there. They never painted a miniature either.
Yeah, I met a bunch of people that it was their first ReaperCon, and they had just painted their first miniature earlier that day. And that was exciting to talk to those people.
I think by the biggest thing that they did was to really emphasize the RPG stuff, because that was going on till 3, 4, 5 in the morning every day.
Oh, yeah.
And it started at 10, whatever in the morning. even at the award ceremony, when that main room was crowded with a bunch of people, those outer areas, those two main gaming areas, nobody left. They were all still there, and they were still there when everybody came out after the award ceremony. So that was impressive. And all award ceremonies, we have an award winner on the podcast with us, someone named Yeji.
Oh,
Yeah,
hi.
Yeji.
We did talk about this last week before. I don't remember, episode 100. So I was like, what, me, what? But yeah, I did, and Clint did as well, and it was really fun. It was really fun.
That's cool, because I know Liz, she got her. There's a bunch of people that were really super thrilled, and then Michael, she got some of her stuff too. So, and actually won several things, like a manufacturer's award and stuff. So yeah, sorry you guys covered that in the last episode.
Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah, we've been talking about they rolled the dice on that convention, and the dice they were using were 6-siders that had 5 1s and 1 6. So to come up box cutters the way they did, that was wow. Now, it almost killed Ron and the rest of the staff, unfortunately. I mean, they were working real hard. Oh, they were so dead Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Oh, they were hurting bad because, well, they had to turn around and, here's Bones 5 hitting them.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
There was no rest for the wicked whatsoever. But it was really neat having the Fort Wapple area. We may have to add more tables to that next year, which is a scary thought to already have to be thinking that way.
Well, that's it. I kind of wish that they had you in with the artist alley area as well.
I think what they were trying to do was actually make it a little bit easier for me voice-wise and sound-wise, because being across the whole point of me being out there was to be doing demos, and it's hard for people to hear me, especially when there's like announcements being made.
Yeah,
I'll always be in the middle of something, and then boom, somebody's getting on a microphone, and it's 2 minutes of just, okay, I'll just stop now. I'll just stop everything I'm doing.
We need to get you one of those the what is it? Like, how when people demo a product, and they have the little mics.
Oh, I actually asked for something like that. But what we're going to do, the idea this year was to actually have a monitor behind me, like one of their big monitors, and I would hook the camera up to that. What I'm going to try and do is get a better version of that, basically a more updated version that has an HDMI cable instead of a VGA, which Abraham Lincoln, I think, used VGA cables at Gettysburg, I think. So that way they could just plug this directly into one of those bigger monitors, and we would get some kind of USB speaker, and that little speaker could sit out in the front part of the table so people could hear me, even if there is volume and noise going on around me. Because that started to happen even with the Clockwork Dragon. When I was doing that demo, there was conversations on either side of me, and people, they're trying to lean over to hear me, but they can't see me because the monitor, they're now leaning over the top of the monitor. So that we're going to test this also hopefully at Gen Con next year, because there you have music playing and the booth across from us, and it was impossible to hear me at all. So we're going to try and work this out, see what the wonders of USB and Bluetooth work. I already have headsets and everything, so it's just a matter of some kind of Bluetooth speaker or whatever that can project my voice a little bit further. And I'll just crank it up louder. If they crank up the music louder, my speaker gets louder. And if that gets louder, I'll bring additional speakers. I'll be rivaling the guy making the announcements. There'll be an entire room hearing me. It's my voice, it's hard to hear me over other conversations. It's not the most loud booming voice ever. But it was fun to do those demos. We were doing those till good 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning every day. usually Fort Wapellet at Adepticon, there's so much mayhem going on that I don't get to do any demos. But here I could actually kind of sit down. We're working on the big old 5-headed dragon.
It was really cool to see that dragon. That dragon's awesome.
That was Julie was. We actually got to talk afterwards, Tuesday and Wednesday, about it. She's the one that sculpted it, and she really I think it was the first time she'd seen it painted as a unified color scheme.
Oh yeah.
Because I didn't play D&D, so I had no idea that he's supposed to, in my invisible air quotes, have 5 different color heads. And yep. she pointed out that, Jim, look at each of these feet. They're different. Some of them have 6 toes, some have 7 toes. She said, yeah, okay, the different colored heads is great, but then you'd also have to do different colored toes, because this is supposed to be kind of like a dragon golem. And she said, look at how the tail is different, the texture of the heads is different, but then the texture of the scales also changes on the legs versus here and there. So she wanted it to be more of a unified thing, but it was more like a mutation, I guess, versus something that was stitched together. That these things were just coming out of nowhere. And I didn't realize that she had actually used a lot of Fimo on that to sculpt it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I saw the green a few years ago, but she had actually used green Fimo. Super similar color to green stuff, and I couldn't tell. She actually told me that Fimo and green stuff, if you get the mixture just right, Fimo will harden. You don't have to bake it. The green stuff alone will chemically interact and harden it.
Oh, nice.
So that's old school. There, yeah. That's not quite ZBrush right there. That's just old-fashioned chemicals mixing together.
Yeah. I don't like using the green stuff. It's really hard to work with.
I always liked, to me, the epoxy sculpt was my favorite, and round stuff, which you never see anybody use anymore.
Yeah, epoxy sculpt is what I use right now for various things.
Because the brown stuff was always fun, because that didn't quite bounce back into shape the way the green stuff did. It's like the way people always told me is that green stuff wants to just be a ball. It just wants to be a blob. It does not want to be a shape that you make. It's always constantly trying to pull itself back, which is brown stuff is kind of the opposite. You can make the chiseled edges with that and it'll stay there.
Okay.
It's more brittle than green stuff. It's not as resilient. It'll break more. But I remember back in the day when you would see greens, almost a third of it would actually be brown, or even a brownish green.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But then we never even knew until not that long ago that if you mix more blue in, you're going to get a different type of green stuff than if you have more yellow, which is why most faces tend to be on the yellowish green side, because that'll give you softer, easier to achieve details. I never knew that.
Yeah, I never knew that either.
I thought you mix it 50-50 all the time. They said, no. If you're just maybe blocking things in, well, use more blue than yellow, because it'll cure faster and it will be much harder, because you're not trying to get detail.
Yeah.
But if you're doing an eyelid over an eye or trying to sculpt some lips or whatever, maybe you almost go 70-30, 65-35 yellow to blue.
Oh, wow.
Never knew that.
Yeah, me neither.
And we started to do that, and sure enough, it worked. It was helpful. We were able to definitely get some more details.
Yeah, that's good to know. Although I do try to steer away from the green stuff nowadays.
Yeah, I like the...
It almost makes that sound like a drug. I'm trying to stay away from that stuff.
I steer away from that stuff nowadays.
Green stuff is bad, okay?
Okay. Well, the epoxy sculpt, I think I was sculpting wings on some pterodons or whatever, and my armature was basically a flat piece of tinfoil. And it was basically shoved in between 2 layers of epoxy sculpt. And unlike green stuff, that once that magical 15-25 minute period passes where it's rubber, I think I had after 35 minutes, I could still bend the wings.
No, epoxy sculpt has a long working period, and one of the reasons why I actually kind of like it, I used to do the Funko Pops, like the do-it-yourself stuff, and I would actually leave it out because it would be too malleable in the beginning for me.
Yep. Yeah, I usually let it sit for about 5 minutes before I do anything with it.
Makes it real easy to get rid of fingerprints too. Just a little bit of water, and you practically wash them away.
Yep.
And you can file it, sand it, carve it, unlike green stuff, which doesn't let you do that at all.
This episode brought to you by Epoxy Sculpt. Not really.
Yeah.
If anyone knows the manufacturers, like personally, give us a little intro. Maybe we can work some things out.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I want to start doing, is putting out some sculpting videos. Not because I'm some genius sculptor, but I've been asking around since Adepticon. I said, hey, does any sculptor do videos for YouTube? And I said, Jim, you would be surprised how virtually no sculptor does that, for a few reasons. First, you're a real sculptor, and we have one on here, not me. They're doing tons of projects at once. You can't just, here's a video of this one thing we're sculpting. It's like, no, you sculpt a little bit here, put that aside, because no matter what you say, I'll never hit this one piece that I just sculpted. It's on the opposites. I'll never hit it. Boom, in goes your thumb, and you've destroyed it. But nobody really does sculpting videos at all.
Yeah, I've thought about doing some sculpting videos, but I usually just spend all my time actually sculpting, so I haven't actually had the time to look into, getting the video set up and all that stuff. So basically,
it's going to be complicated, because what I would do is have the camera going and record that 5 to 25 minutes that I'm working on this one thing, then set it aside, reset the camera, film. Basically what I do is film all these separate segments. It's going to be really hard to keep track of it all.
Yeah.
But once those 3 to 6 objects are sculpted, then go back, here's all the segments from this one, here's all the segments from the other, and basically reconstitute it all. It looks like it was just one continuous thing, whereas really it wasn't. I'm kind of having to do that with some of the oil painting videos that I'm doing now, rotating them through. Okay, here's oil painting thing number 1, especially if it's a bigger thing. I'll do this here. That goes aside. I'm going to start recording the next oil painting one, and then the next one, and then rotate back around to number 1. That's dry. Boom. I can go on to the next thing. It'll be complicated.
That brings up a question. Have you always sculpted like 3D, or how did you start in this sculpting thing, Mark?
I started using clay. It was probably about 15 years ago, and then just slowly kind of morphed. I started my business in 2012, and I was purely designing characters at that time, and we were hiring other artists to sculpt for us. And that's when I stumbled upon ZBrush. So I started playing around in there and just realized I was a lot better sculptor in ZBrush than I was with the clay. So then I started focusing all my time on doing the ZBrush. And kind of fell into it that way. My wife gave me a call at work one day and said, I think it's time for you to put in your notice. So I put in my notice that day, and I've been doing ZBrush full time ever since.
Nice.
Yeah. And ZBrush is really, really fun. So I honestly spend most of my time just kind of tinkering around in ZBrush, and I have probably 50 characters going right now, and I kind of go back and forth between various ones, and it's a lot of fun.
That's good. Well, really enjoyed seeing the stuff that you had there at ReaperCon. It was great, and actually, I didn't know you were going to be on the podcast until just before we came on. So it's great that we actually get to talk to each other like practically twice in a few weeks.
Yeah, it is great. I didn't know you were going to be on either, so it's really great.
Well, us being the most professional people that we are, I'm like last minute, a couple hours before, I'm like, hey, Jim, are you making it tonight?
Because we actually have the in-laws in town, Kathy's mom and dad. I think they're now in the next room. I think they're in the kitchen now. So we had to warn them, like, okay, there won't be much in the way of streaming Netflix for you because there's going to be a bunch of podcasts going on while you're here.
Yep, and I'm using the computer that we use for our TV downstairs, so Kim can't watch TV tonight.
Well, you can have Kim come on too.
I don't know if she's. I don't know what she's doing. She's downstairs. So.
So now, Frozen Ninja is how many people?
It's basically just me, and then Kim, does pretty much anything that needs to be done to help out and to support, and when we go to conventions, she's the huge help that I need. So yeah. But this was
always nice. Oh, so go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, this was our first convention where we were actually vendors at ReaperCon. So it was a lot of work and planning to get ready for it, and it was a lot more fun than we actually thought it would be. Meeting everybody and talking to basically everybody at the entire show we talked to, and it was really exciting.
Yeah, no, I was surprised when I walked up. Well, and I was talking to Kim before, and then when I walked up when you got there, and I'm like, hey, we'd love to have you on. And you're just like, are you Yeji? And I'm like, wait, what? Who? How? So that was good. That was exciting.
Yeah, that was fun to meet you. I had seen you paint some chibi characters before, so I recognized you when I saw you.
Gotcha. Yeah, was it during Gen Con?
I'm not really sure when it was.
Yeah, I think the only video that I ever did was the Gen Con one on Chibi on Twitch wise anyways. But yeah, that was awesome. I was like, whoa. It's still surreal for us too, like whenever we go somewhere and then people recognize us via voice or, you're just like, I know we have people listening to us, but whoa.
Yeah. And the response I got for my figures was just incredible. I wasn't really expecting all that. So. Oh,
they're great figures.
Oh, thank you.
I really love that the witch one with the dragon.
Yeah, the wizard. She's summoning a dragon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
Well, that's good to hear. I have one in the works. That's kind of a companion piece to that one. So it's been fun.
Where do you get your inspiration from for your models?
Well, basically, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was 8 years old. And so I've always had a lot of stories and characters in my head. I attempted to be a fantasy writer when I was in college, but that didn't quite work out. But I have kind of a bunch of different stories, and I have actually a couple games that I'm working on getting just all the details worked out. But basically, just through all the years of playing Dungeons and Dragons and being really into fantasy and sci-fi.
Nice. Yeah, because like Clint and I, one of the things, and we'll have photos. I think we had a video up. I'm not sure, but we'll share Mark's page here with the links listed below and everything like that. But if you guys go see it, we really liked the fact that on the back of her is the tower.
Yeah, the tower really kind of makes the piece come together.
We're like, you never see, like, that's one of those things that I'm like, I've never seen that on a bus before, where usually the back's just like kind of like a cutout or like a cutaway. And that was one was the first one that we've seen that had something else to it.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah. Yeah. I decided when I was first deciding to make busts, I decided that each one would have its own kind of custom base that goes with the bust, and that wizard one is the third bust I've made, And so I kind of took it a little farther and made a fully custom thing for it, and that really turned out great.
Yeah, it looks really good. I am going to be eating ramen for another, 3 months because of that one. And then there's another Kickstarter coming out in October for one of our other good friends, ReaperCon. He's a sculptor that does ZBrush stuff in Mexico, but he does some awesome stuff. He mainly does chibi right now. And he's putting out a line of chibi sisters.
Oh, cool. He's going to have his own Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm friends with him too, so it'll be nice to see when he releases that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am super stoked about that one.
Yeah.
But, so when is your Kickstarter slated to start?
So we're going to launch it. It'll be Sunday, October 21st at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And
you're in California, right?
Yeah, I'm in California, in Lake Tahoe. And so the Kickstarter will run about 26 days, and we'll have it end on November 16th.
I was trying to count the days, and I can't math right now.
It's about 26 days.
Yeah, okay. So definitely, guys, go check it out. We'll have links below, and then whenever he goes live with it, we'll post it up. And I don't know, maybe do a kick-ass Kickstarter out of it. We usually have like a little thing on the podcast where we go through a couple of different Kickstarters and see if they are like worth it value-wise, or if the models are really cool, or if the write-ups are crazy, and things like that, or like too what is it, overachieving or overextending. I can't English either, guys.
Planning too big for what they can actually deliver.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. There's a fine line between trying to release enough so people are interested, but not overdoing yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we have about 10 figures that are ready to go at the beginning, and so we'll be slowly releasing those throughout the Kickstarter, and then there's about 6 figures beyond that might be released if depending on how we reach stretch goals and stuff.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm pretty much almost ready to go, but I'm going to wait until the 21st and make sure that everything is absolutely ready and in line. So it's very exciting.
Sounds good. Well, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I don't know. Anything else you want to add about your background or about you?
Not really. I play lots of games, and my wife and I play Shadows of Brimstone and Dungeons and Dragons quite often. And actually, I've gotten, ever since ReaperCon, my wife's been a lot more excited to paint. So we've been painting together a couple nights a week, and it's really fun.
Nice.
So,
yeah, it's always nice to share a hobby.
Yeah, it is. And then she'll be, really a big part of helping me with the Kickstarter and stuff. So like on the Kickstarter launch day on October 21st, we'll actually be doing a Facebook event. And so we'll be having a little party here at my house with the two of us, and trying to have a little event for everybody to join in on and kind of get excited for the actual launch, which will be that evening.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah. What is your most favorite model that you've made so far?
My favorite model is the wizard girl that's summoning the dragon. I got the one bust that's 193 millimeters tall, and just priming that was a lot of fun. And I was playing around with my airbrush today, and I was just having to pull myself back from airbrushing that because I have to use that for the promotional pics. So I can't paint it until after the Kickstarter. So,
well, I mean, technically, you could still have it painted like for the Kickstarter.
yeah, but I'm worried I wouldn't do well enough, and the pictures wouldn't be as good. So, yeah, I'm just worried because it's the only one I have in my hand right now. I should have a couple more casts in hand in a couple weeks. So, at that point, then I can start playing around.
Yeah. Are you planning at all to coming to LVO?
I'm not really sure. I need to look into the next convention. I haven't looked into that. I've just been kind of focusing on the Kickstarter and stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, LVO, because LVO's one that's not so, I don't think it's so very well known among the painting community right now, just because it's more of a actual war gaming versus like Pathfinder or things like that. Yes, they do have some tables and stuff last year where it got a little bigger. But LVO's here in Las Vegas. It's either end of January, early February.
Okay.
And we have vendors from all over, whether it's 3D print stuff, local game stores and whatnot, over there. So that might be a cool event, and it's pretty close to you guys as well. So might be something to check out.
Yeah, we could drive down there pretty easily.
Anybody hear this?
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard of it, so I'll definitely have to look into that.
Yeah, we're trying to get it more amongst the mini painting community too. Seth's done an amazing job at trying to get it more grown. Because there was hobby events like 3 years ago, and then it kind of died out a little bit one year, and then Seth brought it back this past year, and we're putting on a bigger painting workshops and everything this year. So, or 2019. I think of convention schedules.
Yep.
So yeah. If you just want to drop by that, for a day or so.
Yeah.
And whatnot, that'd be cool too.
So, did you say you're going to be doing some painting demonstrations?
Yeah, I'll be doing some classes over there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that would be worth it just to come for the classes.
Yes, we're getting Sergio Rubio I don't want to butcher his name, but Sergio from Europe is coming.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then Lynn's teaching, I'm teaching, Matt Cheshwick's is coming, Sam Lenz is coming, Michael Kleiman is coming. There's a bunch of really great teachers that are going to be coming this year. So I'm super excited to teach along with them, and yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun event.
Test.
The next event we have planned, I think, is in May. We'll be going to Burlingame for KublaCon. It's the West Coast. Yeah, it's a large gaming convention. So I might be getting a vendor booth there. I'm not really sure yet. We're still talking about it.
KublaCon's the one in Northern California, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Burlingame. Yeah.
Clint goes to the one to Kingdom Con, because that's the one in San Diego.
Test.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because, a 5-hour drive is better than an 11-hour drive.
Yep, definitely.
Test.
Jim.
Yep.
I'll be seeing you at Adepticon.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got that finalized, but don't know which classes I'm teaching yet, but I'll be over there.
Just be sure to bring warm clothes.
Yeah, just I need to be reminded of that, like, right before, because how are the temperatures over there in March? Does it snow still?
This is my favorite thing. It wasn't all that long ago that it was 89 degrees on March 17th.
Test.
The very next year, on March 17th, it was 22 degrees and there was 7 inches of snow on the ground.
Oh my God.
And we set a record for the biggest temperature difference on the exact same calendar day. I've seen it snow in May here. So, and I've seen frost on the ground in June. So take that as you may.
Yeah.
and I've also seen it be 90 plus degrees in April. So it can be anything, and it can bounce from one to the other. Like, it was 2 years ago at Adepticon where it started out, it was 55 degrees, it was raining, it was windy, it got more windy, it was 45 degrees, then it was 35 degrees, then it started to snow, and a few hours later it was 70 degrees, there was sunshine and snow on the ground.
Oh, wow.
God.
So you can get all of it.
So
basically.
pretty much pack everything.
That's what I try to tell people.
Well, I do pack light, so I will pack heavier this time then.
I keep hearing somebody doing a test thing on their microphone in the background.
Holy crap, is that working?
Oh my gosh, we can hear
Yes,
you.
I've heard a few test sounds over the last minute or so.
Yeah.
I think we...
good or bad is it?
It's good on our end. I don't know how it's recording, so, I mean...
I'll take it.
You sound fine to me.
Yeah, we're recording it on each of our own whatchamacallit, so...
Victory! Believe me, that took effort.
Yeah, it took you 45 minutes. Plus like the 30 right before the podcast.
So, the funny story
Even
of
that
that is...
We have Chris joining us, Chris Schmidt. He's a new probie for us at Models Workshop. But he's been painting for how long?
Probably about 5 years, give or take.
And then he's been whining, saying that nobody loves his art, and
Whining
so
is probably a stretch.
and so I told him he had to whore himself out.
Yes, I've worn this nice skirt number. It looks fantastic. But
And you have to have a big bag because, you know, if you come to Vegas... Oh, Mark, if you ever come to Vegas and there's a lady with a big bag that looks like a party girl, stay away.
Oh, yeah?
it's a hooker. That's why.
We haven't brought it... Yeah, we haven't brought it up in quite a while. But, you know, ladies with big bags, they usually, you know, are sex workers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, once you tell them you have no money, they walk away. So how is everybody?
Doing great.
I'm doing better. I actually had a rough week.
Yeah, I heard that you're not doing so good sometimes.
Yeah, started with the sore throat, and then earlier this week, like on Monday, and then dealt with some anxiety. So I probably do need to go see somebody, but I pretty much haven't left the house in a week.
Honestly, that sounds good to me.
I'm kind of wondering. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if I need to quit my day job and just, you know, be a full-time artist.
It's the dream
Yes.
of many. I would love it personally, but insurance, money, food, shelter, doesn't do good for me if I don't have those things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'd have to make in commissions like at least $3,000 a month, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that.
Not without stopping in enjoyment of the thing, I would say.
You would have my life where I do this 7 days a week, 12 to 20 hours a day, 365.
See, I'm not as disciplined as you are.
And it's what's interesting is not just painting. I spend at least 2.5 hours a day doing the blog, doing the social media thing, answering questions. This morning, I spent an hour and a half just answering messages. And the thing that I'm painting right now that nobody can see, I had to say, look, I have the reference pictures and the concept art for the other 4, but I scoured your website. There ain't no pictures of this. You need to get me a picture of this thing. And that's basic. That will be your daily life when you are not playing with cardboard, because you will have to ship all of those miniatures that you paint, sometimes to exotic locations like Cyprus or the Ukraine or Malaysia. And you'll have to build boxes that are strong enough for you to stand on. Just
Yeah,
to
that's
survive.
what I'm afraid of. Like, is right now I have a chibi swap thing that I've worked on, and it has this whole base and everything, and I'm kind of wondering how to ship it.
That is, I have, for me, it's actually easier to ship things when they're in multiples. Because if I had to ship, say, 10, 15, 20, 30 miniatures, the inside of the box is actually like 30 little boxes in one. Because I'll actually take wood glue and cardboard. I basically use my old mat cutter that I used to use when I was matting my prints. And I cut up these pieces of cardboard, glue them all together, and basically make a honeycombed interior.
Oh, that makes sense.
So the box itself has multiple layers of cardboard just around the outside rim. And then the inside, because one of the things that we learned actually from UPS, from the actual people there, is that you have to realize your package is going to be on a conveyor belt moving somewhere around 60 miles an hour with things that are like the heaviest bowling balls.
Yeah.
And when the conveyor belt moves and that bowling ball hits your box from the side, you need something that will prevent that lateral crushing. And doing that honeycomb type thing is a nice way of stopping that lateral crushing. And we also learned that toilet paper is the best packing thing ever. Especially when you get your miniatures and you're really excited and you poop yourself. Well, now you got toilet paper right there. But we don't use anywhere near as much bubble wrap as we used to. We save every single Amazon box that we get because
that's what we do.
it's mostly for that interior cardboard. It's not so much for the outside box, it's the inside. And we have our own scale. We print our own labels because if you go to the post office with that, it will take you 20 years to get one box out the door.
Yep.
So you will become a shipping expert. You'll have to do all the nice social media stuff, and there'll be people from Australia trying to contact you at around 4:30 in the morning. And it'll just be 24 hours a day because somewhere in the world it's going to be 10 a.m.
Yep.
It won't be your 10 a.m. And that's why most people, they want to do it. But just like Chris was saying, I've seen so many people, they say, wait a minute, this used to be my fun thing. Now it's my work thing, and I don't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah.
And you'll have to do it when you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, and that's the issue with me is some days I just don't feel like doing anything, and then no painting gets done. Like right now I started working again on my commission, and then it was just like piping stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to do it. So it's like set aside, and I'm like cleaning my brushes right now.
Yeah, and for me, in order to get my figures made, I was searching all over the place for casters, and I've used a lot of different casters from all over around the world. And what I found was I had to learn the casting myself. So I had to learn how to make all the molds, how to do all the resin, how to make on and on and on. And it was after about 6 years, I finally found a caster that can do it for me. And so it's just been in the past 6 months really that I've turned over most of my models to this new caster that's doing all the work for me, which is now freeing up weeks at a time for me to focus on making more models rather than being in the shop making molds and doing resin casts. So
Yeah.
it's been a huge difference. When I first quit, I thought I'd be making figures, but I almost spend more time making the molds and the casts than I do making the figures.
When I did the 2D art, I was a glorified Kinko's. I spent most of my time printing prints, scanning prints, matting prints, shipping prints, fixing prints that were shipped back to me from an art show, or trying to dry them out after having them at a Ren fair or whatever. I would basically do one painting a month, maybe, but everything else was mostly dealing with old paintings, making prints of them.
Yeah.
And it was usually those same prints sold over and over, so now you're making prints of the same print over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
The thing
Go
that
ahead.
I notice the most for me is the minute I decided to start taking commissions was good and bad all at once. You kind of get addicted to the money, and unfortunately, when you're addicted to, hey, I'm getting paid for this, suddenly you can't do the things you want to do. And you don't realize it is happening until you're deep into it. So like I've got 3 armies coming up. Well, I can't paint any of my some stuff for 6 months. That drags on you quite a bit. And that's been like current issue for quite a while. How do you maintain that balance?
Yeah, and I kind of face the same thing too, because I want to paint, the thousands of miniatures that I have, but now that I'm making my own, I kind of feel like, well, I need to paint some of my own so I can actually present them painted. And so I'm torn between painting my own and painting some of the ones that I want to paint.
It's a tricky thing too, because other people, they don't realize that 50% of the things that you will have to paint are things that you would never, ever, ever pick up yourself to paint.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if it's something that you like, it may have to be in a color scheme that you really don't like, but it's got to match someone's whatever, or it's their character, it's their money. If they want you to paint it in orange, pink, and green, that's what you paint it in. And you just have to pretty much close your eyes and stick that brush in all those nasty colors and put them all on that same miniature.
Well, and I think I've been really lucky with a lot of my customers because they've become friends now, and that is what I'm afraid of. Like, I don't do big armies. Like, you can't really make money off of doing single models, So yeah, I've done a lot of single models. I've done a lot of like little squads or like night models. Like, I really love painting them. I never want to have them in my house, like just sitting around. So one of my friends is, he has me paint his night models. So I'm happy with that. But like, I know that's not always going to be the case.
It's very, and especially usually when it comes to miniature companies, that they tend to be the ones that choose kind of the worst colors. For whatever reason, maybe it's because of their concept art, or it's whatever their storyline is. These guys wear nothing but white. Everything's white. Their eyes are white, their shoes are white, they walk around on white snow. Everything is white because they're in a white world. Well, that's great in your games thing, but when it comes to your miniatures, it might not be the most complimentary ever. But when people say, this is what I need, this is what you got to do. And sometimes even the concept art, if it has a dramatic background to it, all of a sudden, even if the concept art is the same shape as the miniature, which it's usually not, well, all of it, they've backlit it, and it's against a dark background, and now, okay, you can't light your figure the way they've lit that painting. So you have to somehow say, well, I have to cancel out 30% of this concept art because it cannot be done on the figure. Mm-hmm. And now there's a negotiation. If it doesn't look like the concept art, well, yes, because you can't make it look like that unless I were to basically melt this, flatten it out, and put it on a piece of paper. Then I could make it look like concept art. But being three-dimensional, and also in an entirely different pose, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Or you're basically, like, I painted a lot of armies, you're doing the same color combinations for months. And even when you know there's better ways, and you want to do a particular color in a different, warmer or colder, you got to match the same stuff that you did 6 months ago.
I've had to match things. I've had to match things that I've done 13 years ago.
I'm very sorry.
Which includes like the basing techniques. So I basically, how the hell did I even do this 10, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
There's some things I have to match from 2004, 2005. And I was like, okay, we're going in the Wayback Machine, which means you're doing an old, slow method. There was a reason you didn't do that anymore, because you found something better and faster.
Uh-huh.
But you've got to stick, because you have to match what was done all those years ago. And also the painting techniques, mine, because I'm doing this every day, it changes every day. I don't paint the same way today that I did yesterday. So you can only imagine what the span of 13 years does. But yet the colors still have to be the same. It has to look like the same person did it. And that's kind of a unique challenge, and I feel bad that I mostly scare people away from doing the commission stuff, but I've seen so many people get disappointed along the way, where they're all excited to start out, and then they feel disappointed in themselves. And it's not themselves, it's the grind of the thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, but that's because we're artists and we're the hardest on ourselves. Like,
yeah,
it's just the nature of most artists, I think.
James, do you find that it slowly retards your ability to kind of progress in certain ways?
Not at all, actually, because it's an additional challenge where you have to...
Ah! Sorry. My cat just brushed up against me. I didn't notice her there.
Because you have to be able to, okay, I need to paint my 4th Grey Knights apocalypse-sized army, but I need it to take 25% of the time of the first one, because it cannot take that long. So you have to, usually that's when the painting techniques adapt. Like now I use oils at least 40% of the time, but they have to look just like the acrylic stuff. But the oils allow me to paint mass amounts of things faster that basically look the same, because oils, it's almost like sculpting. You are working on 50 things at once instead of maybe 10, 15, 20. Acrylics, there's a physical limit to how many things you can work on at once. And right here, about 2 feet to my left, are about 50 World War II Soviets that I was painting all in a couple of days with oils, because you're wet blending on the figure. The figure is the palette. You basically have a few colors positioned on your palette, and you are now painting the miniature like it's your palette, and you're mixing right there. Which in that case just saves you a lot of time, a lot of efficiency. And you'll say, okay, if I'm using colors like this, well, gee, all those ogre figures there that have mostly brown skin, or they're wearing skins like leathers, well, now you have those same colors. Those guys get thrown into the mix. So now you're painting 60 Russians and 10 ogres all at once. But most people, they don't want to paint that way, because it is a production line, and it can get to be like, what was that, the I Love Lucy show, where they're like, they fall behind on the conveyor belt and they have to eat half the bonbons or something like that.
Yep.
And she's got a mouthful of bonbons after 2 seconds, and the conveyor belt is going by and there's bonbons rolling on the floor. That's what can happen to you.
Certainly feels like that sometimes, especially with the Imperial Guard armies or Tyranids or whatever it happens to be. Just clones.
One of the things I am trying to do is shift more towards doing the tutorial videos, because, well, they're very fun, for one thing. I'd be painting the miniatures anyway. Why not turn the cameras on and turn it into a lesson for somebody? And it's almost going back to those days of 2D art when I made prints of things. Because in some ways, painting a single commission figure is like a caster, or you're sitting there going, well, I'm going to make this figure, I'm going to sculpt it, I'm going to make a mold, I'm going to make a cast, and then I'm going to destroy all that. I'm going to destroy the mold, the cast, everything, and I'm going to do another one. When you paint one figure, that is all you get out of it. You've painted one, you get paid for your one, and that's it. There is no force multiplier. But hopefully that was the reason why I did the Kickstarter in the first place, was, okay, I did 53 videos, they were 100 minutes long each. Hopefully you can get some resale value out of 5,300 minutes of video that painting one miniature at a time just can't get you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and it additionally monetizes what you're doing. I mean, every successful Patreon that I've seen that apparently must do very well has multiple ways of monetizing the same activity, whether it's Patreon, videos, Twitch, YouTube, all at once. At the same time, he's doing a commission.
You mean on Twitch, just wear a low-cut shirt and be a girl, right?
I'm sure that helps, but the guy I'm
kidding.
particularly thinking of, I don't want that at all, ever. I mean, it certainly doesn't help.
Might as well
I think
look
there's
at
plenty of
pants when
that.
I'm filming my videos. I wear the Aussie Rules football style grape smuggler shorts for that. It doesn't work as well in winter over here, obviously, but hey.
God, what a horrible image. Okay, yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways of picking up money in the same basic task. And I swear, some of the people that really do that well must be rolling in the money. I mean, he's not Bill Gates or nothing, but he has to be doing really well.
I mean, yes, by artist standards.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
not Lamborghinis, but maybe a new car.
Well, for me, the Patreon page, it has made it more practical to do the videos, because now instead of, well, in the old days I was burning and printing and pressing DVDs, but then it became selling USB drives, which still, again, you're having to ship a physical thing. Now with the Patreon thing, I can do these videos, and every month I'm doing about between 20 and 26 hours of videos, and those go up on a YouTube thing with basically with the limited viewership type thing. Unless I tell you can see it, you can't see it. So that makes it, instead of having to be shipping, if I had to ship USBs to everybody that's watching the videos on the Patreon page, that would be a full-time job, just shipping stuff. So it's definitely, that has really helped. And YouTube has changed also. You didn't used to have those different settings before. Before it was, well, you either let everybody see it or nobody see it. And now there's a little, you have 4 different levels that you can choose from. And I still do the Facebook Lives. I do YouTube Live. It's, Facebook Live is kind of for the eyeballs and the interaction. YouTube Live is, well, especially since you can record them, those, now they're almost more like a somewhat more formal lesson with a few people watching and you're talking to. And then the Patreon thing, that's where I get to basically conduct a class, but just with nobody else in the room. But it's also my own, it's either commission things or it's my own stuff, like all of the army painting videos that I'm doing. Well, the next series is on Easterlings. I'm working on getting all my Lord of the Rings stuff back. I had to sell it all off. So the new Pelennor Fields box showed up. I'm getting the Army of the Dead out there, and I'm going to have me some Army of the Dead back, because I used to have about 20 of those things painted, and they were one of my favorite things to paint. So now, well, I'd like to have that army back, but if I'm filming the videos, people get to see how to make an army.
Yeah.
They get to see how to use fluorescent paint and heavy weathering techniques on the same figure, and I get me an army that I can now play again.
Yeah.
So it's and there is income coming in. So that really actually makes it even easier now for me to do armies. Like those Soviets, that was series number 2. I just filmed the last episode and put that up doing the snow effects. And I did, I think, 5 different methods. It's hard to do that when you have one figure. You basically show people how to do one snow method. When you have 60 Soviets to snow base, well, okay, we're going to try 10 bases with this method, another 10 with this. Now let's do the next 40, but combining these in different ways and see what we like best. So it's almost basically these new videos that I'm filming, I'm learning the technique as I do it. So it's not just the person watching, it's me too. It's actually a lesson for me. It's like an experiment, a live experiment, where even I don't know what the heck is going to happen. which to me, it helps people be less afraid to experiment themselves. I mean, how many times have I've seen people say, well, I'd love to do that freehand, but man, I spent 5 hours painting this. I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
And I've heard
I don't think I'm good enough, and yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people say that so many times. I think we all kind of create barriers where we'd rather not have to try and stick our necks out or stick our head above the parapet. We find reasons why, perfectly valid reasons why not to do that.
Yep.
And we all do. I know I do it for certain things, but I try to do more of this kind of free experimentation so that I'm also living by what I'm preaching. I can't be like, yo, go forward, go over the trench, head towards the enemy lines if I'm going to be sitting there at headquarters. I need to be out there too, leading the charge. And this is one way where I can just try new materials and say, look, this may not work. This may fail right in front of your very eyes. I've even done it in live classes.
I think that's important. I mean, that's hugely important. Coming from a position of someone starting, I think a lot of times what videos do is give people maybe a mistaken notion of the process. And, they see people doing, oh, this is perfect, this is perfect, this is perfect. When, all our major mistakes about some of the things we do happened long ago. But for the new folks, like, I was talking to somebody the other day about airbrushing. And they just got an airbrush and they had certain expectations. And those expectations were obviously not being met. And I said, well, the first thing you got to remember is for the first month, you'll be cleaning it all the time because you're just not used to it. And it'll be clogging and you're not used to what consistency to blow through the brush, et cetera, et cetera. It is a tool just like everything else. You will make these mistakes. Everybody does, no matter who they are. I think it's important for new painters to see those mistakes, because I do think there's a barrier to entry that we're starting to look at for some of these things.
Well, all of the listeners will be able to hear them.
What's that?
Okay. Oh, the sound was breaking. At least on my end, the sound was breaking.
Yeah, it was
up
breaking
really
a bit.
Yeah.
It's probably this microphone. It's not good.
I think we're just gonna nod our heads and smile, even though I know our listeners can't see us smile.
Nod and smile.
Yeah.
Next time,
when I used
I will have a
to
better setup.
But I used to do the 2D. I used to do demos at art leagues. I did pastel demos, watercolor demos, and I would intentionally set up a mistake. I was, okay, here's my pastel painting, and I would purposely take that pastel and just slam so much chalk on there that it wasn't going to take anymore. Because the most common mistake that pastel painters make is they put so much junk on that surface, the paper says, I'm out, I'm tapped out, can't put no more on me, I quit. And then basically take it and chuck it in the garbage. And I would do that about 3/4 of the way through, and I do it right, and I'm usually doing a portrait, and I do it right in the middle of the face. And I'd say, oh, well, I guess it's time for everybody to go home. I can't get any more pastels on this. And I would take a razor blade and scrape it lengthwise across the surface, and it would make this hideous sound. And people would go, oh my gosh. And then I'd just start painting again. And nothing had happened to the picture, but what I did do was get rid of probably 40% of all the excess pigment. And people would come up to me years later and say, Jim, you probably saved me $200 worth of pastel paper. Because normally I would just chuck that thing on the garbage. Because I'd say, I can't get any more paint on this.
Wow, that was so close.
Same thing
What was
with
that?
My 16-year-old playing video games. Want a kid? No?
Nah, I already have two. Sorry, I already have two.
I just sent mine off to college, or one of them. And it's just weird getting used to that, actually. And now I got
that would
this
be.
one. He's loud.
You know, I was confused just because he sounds very much like you. It's like, wait.
Which part? The yelling, the screaming, the voice? He's actually
The voice.
2 levels
Yeah,
away.
his voice. Yeah.
So, well, hopefully, if I get it to set up better, the problem is I hear myself talking through the microphone right now, and that's really screwing me up bad. So I'm actually trying to catch up with my own voice, or I slow it up. It's just driving me insane. But I'm glad to be able to talk. It's better than listening for 45 minutes to nothing.
Sorry, I'm like concentrating. I always do this in a podcast, and that's usually why we have Larry on, because he can talk and talk, which is good on a podcast. But
Yeah.
I end up stopping because like I'm like painting one little detail or something. I'm like, okay, I'm not talking. Hold on.
I could talk a while. If you can take listening to this thing, I could just ramble on and on. For example, James.
Yep.
Acrylic paint and tubes, like an artist professional paint versus any one of the vendor miniature paints like Scale 75 or Citadel. If people can use the professional tube paint, do you recommend that kind of thing, or do you figure people would be better off with the 20 milliliter bottles?
Actually, the few times that I get to paint in 2D, I actually use miniature paint now. Because to me, I like it better, actually, than acrylic paint out of the tube. When it dries that color. There's no need to varnish it afterwards, because a lot of acrylic tube colors can turn dead gray once they're dried. And yeah, actually, I really enjoyed and also the miniature paints. It's a lot easier to use them in glaze form than, say, an acrylic paint out of the tube. So I haven't actually, the last time I used any acrylic paint out of the tube was to paint terrain for some of my display boards or something like that. I just, it's interesting because the oil paint I use out of the tube is, well, only Mig Ammo makes miniature paint that is oil paint right now. That is
Well, and then the Wappa Luscious brand.
Oh, yes, that it is super. I mean, it is just like, because you're using those nail polish jars, baby, which means it is just spectacular and fabulous. Yeah, actually, I take the oil paint, squeeze it out of the tube, mix it with about at least 35-40% white spirits, put it in those nail polish containers, and I swear the next convention, we just had no way to get it to ReaperCon, but now that I've got Printer Reaper that is also a sticker, you can darn well believe I'm going to be putting labels on those things. And
I get a free sample, right?
You remember that box with the neat foam and everything goes in there? Oh yeah, we're printing up a whole box. It's going to be this deluxe set.
Nice.
The new Wapple oil paint set, baby. And it's basically just Winsor Newton paint with white spirits in it. That's all it is, because everybody repackages paint now anyway, it seems. So that's the crazy thing is more and more, it's like, why does this paint seem so similar? Oh, it's this other company's paint with a new label on it. That's why it seems so familiar. Just like crazy thing with whatever it was with the brushes or something like that. There's a lot of, if there's things that seem similar, it's because they are. Finding that out the hard way. So, oh yeah, we're going to have the most fabulous oil paint set ever. It's going to be Jim's Fabulous Pigments.
You laugh, but honestly, you've seen crazier things. I mean, if you want to turn it into a production thing, there you go. It's
Well, We definitely, once we saw a certain company selling a set of 10 gray paints for 50 or 60 bucks, we said, okay, Schmindex is going to be a thing. Because to me, the only brush cleaner I use is rubbing alcohol. Because I can take any brush with glue in it, get that glue out of there, and be painting with it in 2 minutes. Well, what we're going to do is just get the dropper bottles, put some fancy labels on there, and put the rubbing alcohol in there, maybe with an essential oil or two to give it a nice scent. And we're going to call it, Miracle Clean or something, some crazy name. We were just going to call it Schmindex because it cleans everything. It's the new Miracle brush cleaner. It's $15 a jar. You too can get 13 milliliters for $15, and it'll clean anything. Of course, you could go to the store and pay $2 and get the same thing, but hey, who's asking?
It doesn't have that cool label.
Does not have a label, and someone didn't tell you that it was a miracle cleaner.
Oh yeah, plenty of that.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. People nowadays, like, you ask a question and you get like 50 different answers of like how to do something. You're like, it's simple, just use this, and they're like, well, but all this stuff includes it. Yeah, that's why it cleans it so well. Just use the main ingredient.
Yep.
Going back to the rubbing alcohol thing, you use that on any brushes, or I know you use for at least some of your painting, you use kind of the El Cheapo versions, right? You would do that with a Winsor Newton as well.
Oh yeah, I use it all the time because it's the only thing that's going to clean all that. What really kills a brush is all that gunk that gets down into the ferrule. And if you're going to use brush soaps, well, you're going to have to really grind the hell out of that brush to get that brush soap down there, and now you got soap in your brush. I would much rather use the rubbing alcohol because I'm using a Winsor Newton brush that I've cleaned with rubbing alcohol dozens of times, and there's nothing wrong with it. Now,
doesn't it dry out the hair, so you should at least like condition it or something?
Well, that's the handy thing about using oil paint every now and then. Because all the brushes that I was thinking of throwing away, I started using them with oil paint. And there was literally this one Winsor Newton brush that must have been 30 years old that had 1.5 hairs left. I was going to throw it away. I accidentally was using it oil painting. I said, what the hell? What is this, like a 20-0 brush? What is this? And then I realized it was that gnarly one-haired brush that the oil paint acted literally like a conditioner. It was it, and now what I'll do is I'll clean them out, but then if I use oil paint, all of a sudden, poof, that oil kind of goes back in and it's reconditioned again. Now 95% of the work is done with my craft brushes, with the synthetics. And I let those get beat up, and when it's time to do the freehand stuff or some objects or paint eyes or whatever, well, out come those Winsor Newtons. So they start to last longer and longer. Whereas those 35-cent craft brushes, they're the ones getting nuked all the time. If they get hit with super glue, wow, who cares? Put them in the rubbing alcohol, and I can just keep using them for glazes, whatever, for blackening colors.
Most rubbing alcohol, most rubbing alcohol is around 70%. Would you go to the 90, 95? I know this is selling 91 in most CVS's.
Well, let's see. This stuff here, it did 70%. The stuff, and it must be the same stuff I use all the time. I never even looked to see what the percentage was. It's just actually, even when we were doing the little preliminary thing here, I was using rubbing alcohol on probably 10 different brushes. And you could see, like if you use a clear blister pack and you put the rubbing alcohol in there, you would just see that water or that rubbing alcohol turning black. And it's getting all that gunk out of the ferrule.
Yeah, I use it for airbrush cleaning, all the time. So, interesting.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's the bomb for that.
I wasn't expecting it to work quite so well with that. But I was glad that it did, because I always run out of the airbrush cleaner like in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I use a 99%. I have to ask special order it through Amazon or CVS or something, but I haven't found anything better. Works great.
Yeah, and actually I used it as a as a painting medium now too, especially with the weathering powders. Because you take a weathering powder, you take your rubbing alcohol, it's now a liquid paint. It's like watercolor. Except the neat thing is when it dries, it's a powder again, and you can push it around like it was a weathering powder. Until it's fixed with some kind of pigment fixer or whatever, it's free flowing. So I've been able to do some really fun things. I've actually painted entire miniatures just with weathering powders because the rubbing alcohol it liquefies it. You use a little less rubbing alcohol, now you get a thicker pigment. If you use more, now it's almost like a glaze, literally a glaze of weathering powders.
Yeah, I got some of the secret weapon weathering powders at ReaperCon, and I've been experimenting with those. So it's a lot of fun to try those out.
And there's, 36 different weathering powder colors I think that he makes now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot. More than probably
So
anybody really needs.
But it's fun because when I think it was some T-3485s, and I wanted to do basically the winter whitewash effects, and I just basically took the rubbing alcohol and the white powders and mixed in some of his green so that it would be a little different here and there, and I just let it go. I just literally let the rubbing alcohol fall as it may, and I got natural streaking, some areas that looked a little more, less of the white covered and more in other areas, and it had a very natural looking effect. And it took minutes instead of just trying to use I know they like MIG ammo, and so they sell the whitewash style paints that you use, but this was faster. It was pretty fun. Now, if you got to paint a miniature with it, you're pretty much more limited to earth tones and more subtle things. You're not going to get quite the bright, highly saturated colors that you might with, say, miniature paint. But still, it's fun. You don't necessarily have to paint the whole thing with the weathering powders, but it can certainly work well, say maybe on a robe or on a base or something like that. Instead of just having the dust kind of pile up all over the place, you can get a more controlled wash of it, and then it really gets down in the crevices. And then again, that ability to just kind of wipe it away when you want to.
Awesome. Just wish I had all the time in the world to kind of play with it. There's so many things, so many different angles on the hobby. It's kind of hard to get everything in,
Yeah, it seems like there's been a lot of new paints that have been coming out lately with all the color shift paints and the translucent paints that I would like to try, and I just don't have time to try them all.
I know I've had to try a bunch of those things because they kind of come across my way, and sometimes the nifty ideas don't quite work. That the idea seems great, but it can also be so situational. Well, it works if you A, have an airbrush, B, if you spray it with gloss black primer first, B, if it's also 3 feet tall, and C, if you don't want to have any shading on it, then it's perfect.
Yeah.
So sometimes the idea outstrips the practicality of it, because some companies kind of trying to come up with the next big thing. Just like, with airplanes and cars, there were some ideas that seemed really great that turned out to be kind of suicidal. But you never really know until someone actually tries it, and then there's something that hits, and then everybody wants to be the next person to come up with something that hits. Because I've seen a few products out there that and I've had to try a few where I'm like, how do I deliver the bad news?
Right. I kind of look at that with the chameleon stuff, the color shifting. I don't know how you use that and keep control of what you're doing to a certain extent. I think there's some things that'll look good in maybe
that's what Jim was referring to with the painted gloss black first and all that stuff, because he and Larry had this whole talk about how to use some of it.
Yeah, it's a really, again, it's a situational thing that I haven't even been able to find the situation where it would actually work. What I've actually used, someone years ago brought up this Vallejo metal medium stuff, and well, because of the way things are here, I never get to do metallic stuff. But once I got into the historicals and other things, I got more opportunities to test this thing out. And I said, wait a second, I can take my blue liner, brown liner, red, these really super dark pigments, these dark colors, mix them with this metal medium, and now I have a metallic blue-black. And the more of the metal medium I mix in, the lighter it gets. But then I started mixing it with my bright Reaper paints, and now I get bright color metallic paints. And I've actually painted a few things entirely with the metal medium mixed in with my regular paints, and they almost look like they're color shifting, but they also have lights and darks.
Yeah.
And I can also paint, what is it called, TMM or something like that, the true metallic metals, whatever that is. I was just doing that on a couple of figures 2 days ago in a video where, okay, we're going to paint this axe in the same method I would use if I was doing non-metallics.
Yes.
But what I'm going to do is the twist is I'm going to add this metal medium to it. And people said, Jim, that's weird. It looks like it's non-metallic, but boy, it has that metallic shine to it. I said, yeah, all I did was mix in the metal medium to the colors I would have used anyway. And that's another one of those things that just added a neat new twist, just kind of by accident. Once I realized I could do all the same old non-metallic stuff, all I had to do is just add this medium in there, and I get something completely different. I said, there we go. And I can use it on anything. There is no only with an airbrush, only with this over this colored primer, that sort of thing. It's in all situations I can use it.
Something I think people forget is that there are many different ways to get to that same effect. A lot of folks, especially ones that I've noticed, they ask, what's the recipe for this color or whatnot, or how did you get to that point? And that becomes their default way of doing it.
Once I got into the historicals, that's when I really ran into that, because this is a very mechanical style of painting. They have a 16-step program, and they will follow that religiously, because step 1 through 16 yields this result every single time, which is why you generally see like a vehicle that looks hyper-realistic, and then if there's any infantry with it, it tends to look like maybe their son might have painted it, who is significantly younger than them, because those same methods of panel line wash and varnishing it in between every little layer of paint does not work on a human figure. It's an entirely different animal. It works great on a vehicle, but not on a person. And people try to find that same thing. Well, I need a 5-step thing that does flesh tone perfect every time. And it doesn't work that way, because every miniature is different. Depending on what the sculptor did, I guess we kind of got introduced to it early because Reaper has so many different sculptors. So we had to go, okay, this person sculpted it. That random bump is actually like a purse or a pouch. Someone else, that random bump might be a frog. You just have to learn what their random shapes are. Like, okay, this is their interpretation of a face. Also kind of looks like fungus on a tree, but that's how they sculpt faces. And you just kind of have to roll with it. And if you have, I can only paint with this way, you'll have problems when you have to adjust that. Like that adjustment that I made adding the metal medium in to my normal non-metallic stuff, and I have an entirely new way of painting now that I did not have maybe 2.5 months ago. And it basically arose from wanting to get that kind of blackened steel look on, the barrel of a rifle or on a submachine gun or whatever for historical stuff. And I happen to have the metal medium, and the experiments worked out better than I ever could have imagined. But you have to be willing to try and fail, I guess.
And there's in our hobby, there's so many random, strange things. Not even metal versus fabric, leather, plate. You know, in the science fiction, all kinds of variety of that exist. So you're forced into it. I guess it never occurred to me in the historicals, you really don't. You really kind of just have certain things.
Chris, I think we're losing you again.
God damn it.
Yeah, I heard about 3 words of all that.
Yeah.
Is this better?
It might be, the sun with the internet.
Actually, I think it's just this whole setup is jerry-rigged to hell. So I have to, by the 2 weeks, I'll have to have something better than this.
I know, well, I have, I think I'm working on, 17 different bolt-action armies and 5 different terrain tables simultaneously, and now rebuilding all my Lord of the Rings stuff and working on the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures. So that's going to be fun doing all that. But
all now, recently?
Yeah, all now.
Jeez.
Well, I wanted to have, with the army painting videos, I didn't want it to just be nothing but bolt action armies. Well, I don't do 40K or fantasy anymore, so I was looking for, what if I'd love to have my Lord of the Rings armies back. And then they re-released the game. Simultaneously with the decision to make Lord of the Rings part of the army painting, conveniently, here's the game reborn again. And it was my one favorite system. The reason I play Bolt Action now is because in many ways the system resembles Lord of the Rings. So that's something I'm adding into the army painting mix. And then at ReaperCon, Jim goes, so hey Jim, have you painted any of the Ice and Fire figures yet? My Ice and Fire what? I had never heard of it before until we were at ReaperCon. He says, how the hell did you never hear of this before? It was a slightly successful Kickstarter. I'm like, I thought I'd never heard of it before. And he goes, well, it's all Game of Thrones. I'm like, well, never read the books, never saw the show. He says, what the hell? So then he brought the box over and he says, Jim, look at these damn things. And I said, wait a minute, this is how they come out of the box? He said, yes. He said, poke your finger with that pike over there and stick the sword in your finger. I'm like, holy crap, that's almost going to draw blood. He says, yeah, that's that nifty new hard plastic. No bendy weapons here. And I said, this is how this thing comes? He says, yeah. He said, would you want to do some of your army painting videos on that? Because I don't know, there's units that go on movement trays, like that fantasy game you used to play. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, this would not make a bad army painting thing. And it's actually going to get extra crazy with that because I'm going to paint the same unit once in acrylics with the non-metallics. Then again, using that metal medium for the people who want to be able to paint their stuff in metallics. And then once again, using oils. So
that's a lot.
That's a bunch of those. So that's going to be fun. Basically, now there's going to be some alternate. There'll be maybe some sci-fi stuff. Then there'll be the historicals. There'll be some oils, some non-metallic. There'll be the Song of Ice and Fire, some Lord of the Rings. So you'll get several different game systems. This way, it's just not the same thing over and over. But the thing that's the same all the way through, it starts with basing. And by basing, all right, we'd love to do this fancy base. And we love to put glowing stuff on every single base. Here's how much time it's going to add to every single one. Now multiply this times 30 or 40 or however many guys are in your army. Are you willing to spend that type of time currency? Because time is money for everybody. Even if you're not doing it for a living, your time is money. Are you willing to spend that extra 10 minutes on every base And oh look, you have a glowy base, which means now you have to have object source lighting on every guy that's standing on that base. It's going to look really cool, but you have just now added 15, 20 extra minutes to each figure, if not more. Are you willing to take 20 minutes times 30 or 40? Do you have that kind of capital to spend? So these are kind of the choices that most people, when they're making their color schemes, they come up with something, they start it out like, holy smokes, it took me 2 months to finish one unit. How am I going to do an army? And then sometimes the army project just dies. And then their group's not even playing that game anymore. And then they try to eBay this 1/3 painted army. So the idea of these things is to try and get people faster ways of doing their units, time management. How do you plan this stuff out to maybe make the project be a little less miserable for you? Because the project always is fun when it starts out, and then there's that sort of half, like a Kickstarter. Every Kickstarter has that middle point where people are kind of starting to think about other campaigns, and they're still far from a certain stretch goal, and they know it's all going to shoot up in the last 48 hours anyway. That's every project I've seen people. Well, let's put it this way. I've had enough projects end up on my desk of people that just say, I can't look at this anymore. That's how that whole army of Finns ended up on my desk, and Russians, because the person could not paint brown anymore. They just wanted to shoot themselves. So it ended up on my desk, where I had some greens and some reds and other colors that it looks like brown when you see it from a foot away, 2 feet away. But if you were to look at it close up, you would see there's every other color of the rain. There's purples in there. So I'm entertaining myself as I paint it, but it's also got a little more depth, a little more natural look to it than just brown shaded darker. And these are the kind of things I'm trying to include in these army painting videos, where it gives you a few ways of maybe jazzing up the unit, but not making it take 50 years to get through. Or in the case of the Song and Ice and Fire stuff, how do you pop those guys off the bases and do something interesting with them and still make it mesh in that movement trait? Because that's a technical, I've already had several people say, well, what would I do? I've even seen it on the Facebook page. How would I do something? How would I put something interesting on this movement tray and my bases? Because I'm sick and tired of seeing just static grass in brown. There's ways to do it that A, aren't expensive, B, won't take very long, and C, will give you really good results. And that's kind of why I'll be doing the videos, is to give people a few alternate ways of maybe, again, adding something special to that army without adding lots of time to it. Because we all have limited hours to spend on our own stuff. Each person here has all said, when I go to do my own stuff, I don't have infinite time for that.
Yep.
That's why I started trying to do this route is, well, if my own armies are the subject of the videos, it might... The other thing, too, is, well, you have to kind of know the game system. If you're not aware of how that base is going to interact, if they're going to be in base-to-base contact for close combat, well, you better, if you're going to do fancy stuff on that base, how do you do it so that it's still game-worthy? And once you've done this to your base, well, you're not going to be able to carry it in those foam cases. Well, now you're going to have to magnetize that base. I've got at least 2 or 3 blog posts that just talk about magnetizing figures and making carrying cases to hold them. I actually got to the point where I used a magnetic primer on my display boards. Because sure enough, in every tournament, you have somebody that's not watching where they're going. They're looking at their phone, or they're looking for the next list of opponents, and they just smash right into you. And actually, my Tomb King army, it was the third one that everything was magnetized. figures magnetized. They were actually magnetized to my display board. It's neat stuff, actually. It's basically metal shavings mixed with paint. It weighs a ton.
I'll have to check that stuff out.
I think Rust-Oleum makes it. And I picked up this quart can and almost fell on the floor because it weighed a lot more. Basically, take a quart of paint and add like a shaved down hammer to it. That's how heavy it felt. And if you don't rotate the can, all that metal stuff sinks to the bottom and kind of becomes a giant slug.
Yeah.
And at $20 a can, you don't want that. That's an expensive metal slug to have. So these are the little tidbits that come along when we're weird. Especially me. I just thought everybody that painted miniatures did it because they either played the game or they were painting miniatures from someone who was going to use them in the game. And then being at places like ReaperCon where these are just display things, or they're 75 millimeters tall, which could never be used in a game, or they're a bust. And now even the busts are getting to be basically half life-sized, if not life-sized. That was really weird because our introduction to painting was figures for use in games. That's kind of what kept us in business. Was all right, and unlike a painting where nobody really needs to have that on their wall, if you're going to play Lord of the Rings, you need at least one army worth of figures. And since most people don't have the time to paint it themselves, well, here, paint my army for me. And we said, wait a second, there's people that need these things. Not like our other stuff where it's just, I don't really need that hanging on my wall, or I'm out of wall space. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever out of space for figures. people will buy an entire new house just to store their figures. I mean, there's got to be at least 10 Facebook memes a day about people sneaking more miniatures into the house.
Yeah.
And there are already like plastic totes on their roof of miniatures.
That just means we're gonna live forever.
That's what it is.
I hope so. In which case.
It's Willy Wonka's figure factory. So we always say, man, and then there's these miniature companies that, well, they need their stuff painted because nobody buys, well, nowadays, nobody's just going to buy a render, but they're not going to buy a green. They're not going to just buy unpainted figures in somebody's photo booth. Somebody's got to paint them.
Yep.
So all of a sudden now there was a real need for these painted figures. We said, oh, this is more like it instead of the painting stuff, because there you just have to hope that, well, A, the weather is good at whatever Ren Fair or Celtic Fest you're at, or that you're at the right sci-fi show and you got the right stuff. Here it was people are contacting you. They're like, no, here's a figure. We're handing you a figure that we wish to have painted, and we will give you money for that. It's like, wow, really? We don't have to, like, drag this somewhere and beg someone to buy it with the sad puppy dog eyes? This is cool. This is good. And we thought everyone else painted miniatures that were either going to be played with by them or somebody else. And I think it was about 2009, 2010 when we learned, nope, we are the weird ones. That is not quite how it works.
Yeah, I've always
Oh, go ahead.
I've always painted my miniatures just for fun and just for display. I've only used them a couple times in D&D games, and my Shadows of Brimstone game is still unpainted, but someday it'll get painted.
We started out painting Blood Bowl figures, which is a game where most of the figures spend half the time face down on the board or in some various stage of not standing up. So you can't, I mean, it's literally a game where you are knocking over your own miniatures. That's what miniature painting started for us. So maybe that kind of warped our perspective on it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say sometimes I have to go to like 3D printers and smaller companies and like beg with puppy dog eyes, like, can I paint your mini? I'll paint it for you.
That was the big thing for us, was finding out that we didn't have to. Well, in some ways it's a little bit like doing the 2D art, but now there is definitely people need us to paint things, because we are kind of we help be their window to the outside world.
Yeah.
Because there was a Kickstarter recently where I said, well, yeah, I mean, look, even if it's just a striated 3D print, you're better off having somebody, no matter who it is, paint that. Because I know there was a time where showing just sketches was good enough for a miniatures Kickstarter. Then it was sketches and renders. Then it would be sketch, render, and maybe a test. And then now people want to see basically a painted, finished thing, because they've been burned too many times. And I saw a Kickstarter recently where they just said, well, no, we just want to get this going now. We'll just do it. And they barely funded because all they had were renders. It wasn't until maybe the last day of the Kickstarter where they finally had a physical thing. It was some kind of test print that they had. And it was a close run thing. And they kind of said, yeah, maybe we should have just at least had one or two physical things, because you can't tell size either.
Yeah.
There was something that I think it showed up here, and I was shocked at how small it was. It's like it looked at twice the size on screen, and the renders can fool your perspective because you have nothing to compare it to.
Yep.
That I was not expecting, was to see that difference in what the perceived thing was and what it ended up actually being physically in front of me. That was a shock. And I know, though, there was the really big one that went from hundreds of thousands to almost not funded, because all of a sudden people, they didn't know what material was going to be used. And they started to wonder, well, wait a second, if this is what the shipping is going to be, well, then they can't really be shipping metal here. Is it going to be resin? Is it plastic? And that's where it comes back to those Song of Ice and Fire miniatures, where parts of it are in the softer plastic, the bulkier parts, but all of the stuff with detail is done in the harder plastic. And I spent at least 6 hours today filing the mold lines on those, and I have to say, I was able to prep those faster than most resin or metal figures, because every single sword or pike was perfect. I never had to touch them.
That's great.
It took me longer to prep 7 Easterling figures with their distorted sword blades and their bent pikes and everything else, basically trying to reforge their helmets. And these cheap plastic things that are, I don't know, maybe 30 cents a piece, because there's something like 100 figures in the box. And when you factor in all the other stuff that's in the box that's not miniatures, those are pennies on the dollar figures, and they were actually easier to prep than figures that are sold for $4, $5, $7 a piece. That's technology's an interesting thing these days.
Yeah, it's moving fast.
It's magical.
Well, with you doing the Twitch thing, it seems like Facebook Live, all of these, if you want to do online streaming and stuff, every software is updating every week and a half. And like XSplit seems to change all the time, and because you've been doing this for how long now? Yeji, your Twitch thing? I'm sure you've had to
about
switch
2 months
things.
or so.
Doesn't it seem like it kind of changes a lot? Like the paradigm just keeps shifting all the time?
Yeah, a bit, and then like we keep adding things to it, finding out new things and stuff. So it has been changing quite a bit.
And I wonder if that's why I'm seeing people doing less of it, because they're starting to realize that, well, doing this consistently means having to keep up with all of these changes that keep happening. Because I used to see, so-and-so live on Twitch, so-and-so live here, and I see less and less and less of it. And I'm not sure if it's just me there's an algorithm cutting me out?
Part of it is Facebook did change the algorithm again, and so like if you don't actually like the person that actually is doing the stuff, then you don't see it as much anymore. Part of it also is just, I think some people have now been burnt out of it as well.
Well, yeah, I can see that, because you have to do it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And even, not even just that, like even to promote yourself, you have to go and hang out at other people's channels too. You can't just be yourself and just be like, okay, I'm just going to do me and that's it. Because it's just not how it works. Like it really is like a Twitch community. It really is.
They call it rating.
Job on top of your full-time job.
But honestly, you can't survive without having more than, at least 2 jobs anymore.
I'll fight that to the death.
Well, the Patreon thing, it's an extra job, and unfortunately, it could become an extra 3 jobs all by itself. When you start adding things, it's almost like a Kickstarter. You start adding those extra pledge levels, then you say, that's great, we're going to make this more up front, but now your fulfillment's going to be that much harder because you have added all this additional stuff. And it can happen with the Patreon. There's things that I have not turned into pledges because I say, wait a second, that means shipping between 15 to 30 extra boxes a month just for that. And is that something that I want to add onto everything else? Even though it would bring in money, unfortunately, even for me, there is a limit to what I can do in a day. If there was 4 clones of me, that would be different. But apparently, like, each clone is supposed to be more stupid than the original, and then that's bad. When you start out with what you got, and now you're going to make it each one dumber than the next, that's not going to work too well. Now, when you're choosing stuff to do on your Twitch stream, is it, okay, here's something I've been working on the last 2 or 3 streams, or is it a new figure each stream?
It's usually a one and done each stream so far. We are going to be doing more on this War Machine commission that I'm doing, and that one's going to be more of a this is the goal. I'm going to be, working on these, like a squad of these, like for maybe 2 sessions and then 2 or 3 sessions and finish them. But right now it's mostly been just one and dones from like, from like chibi lines to the night models commission that I was doing. So yeah.
With back to our guest here and the different games that you would like to develop, would they be more along the lines of the kind of the board game with playing pieces, or is this more of a war gaming type thing that you're thinking of for some of your future games?
More of the board games that come along with, with the set of figures that come with them. But also a couple of card games that I'm kind of, there's kind of a mix of games I'm developing, but we play more of the board game type games.
Because I don't know, it seems like some people have actually gone away from the video games and they're sort of getting back into the board games because the board games have actually almost more visual things to it than the video game does.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in some of the board games that are really fun, and you have a lot more interaction with not only the game itself but the people you're playing with.
Yeah, there's the semi-cooperative and someone may be a traitor type things. It seems like those type of mechanics really resurrected the board games just in general.
Yeah, there's a lot of new, really, really fun games that, I played a game at RageCon in Reno a couple months ago, and I was the assassin, and I convinced everybody that I was on their team, and so at the end of the game, they gave me the power, and I won the game. And so it was really exciting because everybody was assuming that I was actually on their team. Everybody thought the assassin was somebody else, and it was really exciting.
Well, and I think part of it too is like we're realizing that social media and all these different things like electronics have taken over our lives, and so some of us are trying to get back to like family time, or hang out with friends time.
Well, if you look at just the demographics of it, I mean, most of us, a lot of us that grew up with D&D and some of the old board games, Battletech, whatever, we're 40 now. We're 40, 50 years old. We got family. I think it's just a natural progression. Suddenly we have a little bit of excess capital to use, and we don't want to play video games with the kids because that, that's what they do all the time. So a lot of people, I think, are starting to show their kids that there's this new and different way of doing things. And it just so happens that you have 1,000,001 board games that combined all these features that didn't exist back in the day when it was Sorry or Trivial Pursuit. There's a whole another level of interaction you can do, and it doesn't even have to be player versus player. And I think that's very attractive. At least it has been for me as a parent, to have that ability to do that with the kids.
And to have some of these new games are actually like learning games. Like we played Codenames with my family a couple months ago, and everybody loved it so much that various people in the family have got out and purchased the game. And we spent the whole weekend playing that game, and my dad is an English teacher, and he, at the end of the weekend, he was in love with the game because he was seeing how the words interact and how people were actually learning things to, just to play the game.
For me, Kathy, she likes the zombie side thing because it's a cooperative thing, and it's sort of they can almost make it like they're in the movie, like they're in a zombie movie, and if they all survive, yay, and the credits roll. They felt like they'd just been in a movie. For me, I love the Battlestar Galactica game because you have between 4 and 6 other people, and you are trying to get inside their heads and play around in there. The game itself is totally secondary to getting inside their heads and making them think what you want them to think, and that's a fun challenge. And since for whatever reason the complete statistical improbability of me always being human and never being a Cylon, it makes it really easy to hunt them down. I've been kind of known as the Cylon hunter because people act. You can see people will act a certain way, and you can tell when they're trying too hard or when they're not trying enough. And it's fun to just kind of like read. They're like coloring books. They start out as line drawings, and now you just start to fill in the colors, and you learn what each person is about. There are games. There's games I don't like. Is it Serenity board game? No, it's the based on whatchamacallit. Firefly, the Firefly board game. It's a spectacular looking game, and there's lots of neat things to do. But until they added the screw your neighbor element, it was literally 4 to 5 people playing their own separate games. They just happened to be playing them all at the same table. You could actually just walk away while all the other people did their turns, and until it was your turn, someone said, "Hey, get over here, it's your turn." There was no reason to even be at the table. Then to try and make it more interactive, then they had it where you could kind of screw over the other players, so you kind of had to be there. Somebody might take away your crew or something. But those games aren't very fun for me because you're not interacting with the other person's head.
Yeah.
Other people like the card games. They're usually not my favorite because you got 6 or 7 people, and you're really not trying to interpret what they're doing. All you're doing is just looking at your own deck. It's like, that's just not for me. Other people love them. They're addicted to those. But it's kind of cool because they're still playing with a deck of cards instead of a video game.
Yeah.
And that they still are actually interacting with other humans, not through a headset. Although I wonder, like with the painting thing, it's with game stores going away. We're losing another major game store here, I think, at the end of this month. So just in less than 10 days, that's going away. There's very few places for people to actually get together and play games unless they're at somebody's house. So I guess that's the nice thing about these board games, too. It makes it rough. I don't know how people sell like miniature war games anymore. Because where are people playing these?
Yeah.
We play them at our house. We play them at our friend's house because we have actually made the effort to have a table, a 6x4 table with terrain. But a lot of people either don't have that option. Now, most people don't have that option. So where do they go to play those games?
What is very surprising to me is my local game shop, if you could call it that, is almost pay to play. It is basically either $5 a share, or you can get like a season pass, and they serve food, malts like ice cream malts. They have beer and liquor, and I cannot tell you how popular that thing is. There's cars there all the time. It's unbelievable to me. But they're very successful, which surprises me because regular bricks and mortar places that I've seen that are, specific for war games or things like that, they don't do so well. But this is board games. They have just started some miniature war games. They do D&D, and then they do like scheduled events.
We're losing that signal.
Probably again. But there's a lot of different things that's very strange to me that work that should. What?
Can't hear anything you say, Chris.
That entire segment we heard half of a word.
Word. It's God knows what. The hell with it.
Yeah, in Vegas, there's a store just for board games, and you take a monthly, you either come in by the day or come in by the month, and then you pretty much play all the board games that are there. And then our FLGS, you can go there and play, and they have drinks and stuff like that, too.
I know there was it the Wandering Dragon? That one I think is still around, and they had a gigantic thing of board games that were open, and you could just grab one and play it, and you could try it to see if you liked it. And some of these games were big board games that cost $140 or more, and we'd say, "Well, are you sure?" They'd say, "Look, it's on the open game shelf. Feel free to grab it and try it out." Actually, that was how I ended up playing Memoir 4-4. It is my favorite board game. Oh, I love that thing. It is spectacular. Never would have played it if it wasn't an open game sitting there on a shelf where we could just open up, take it, try it, see if we liked it. So, it works. Now, you hope that people will not mess up the game and then make it an incomplete thing, and someone else goes to try and play it to see if they like it, and all the pieces are missing or key pieces are missing. But that was kind of a neat thing, and you starting to see that more and more at game stores where they have that kind of open box thing set up where you can grab a game and just try it out, see if you like it.
Yeah, they had a lending library for games at RageCon up in Reno. And in order to get one of the games, they would weigh it and record it down to like the gram. And so when you returned it, they would weigh it again, and you have to return it to the same weight. Otherwise, they would charge you or do whatever. I'm not really sure, but like they had Gloomhaven as one of the games you could just grab and play, and they had all these huge games, and it was quite a production.
That's a really large. We saw that sitting in the Reaper store. That was a big old box.
It's huge, yeah.
Now, is that kind of a Cthulhu universe type thing?
I'm not sure. We didn't end up playing that one because it is. I've heard it takes a couple hours to even set up. So I was surprised they had it at the lending library at the convention.
What are some of the, is it Arkham Horror, something like that, where there's like the whole town is set up, and that one you better set aside 2 days to be able to play that one?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I haven't heard too much about that one.
Because it's a group of folks that we first met back in 2006, actually, as part of a Blood Bowl league, and they every last Saturday of every month, which I guess would be this next Saturday coming up, they have people over to their house and they play board games. That was where I tried out Star Trek Ascendancy, I think, for the first time.
Oh, cool.
That's where we first got to play things like Zombicide or the Battlestar Galactica game. They'll play a lot. Was it Flux, I think? And there's many versions of Flux, so they'll play that a lot. That's kind of a quicker game that they'll play in between games. But then every so often they will set up something like that Arkham Horror thing where it takes up an entire table, like an 8-foot-long table. And there's 6 people sitting around that. And me, I'm usually not playing games there. I'm usually prepping miniatures somewhere else. Or I'm prepping miniatures just kind of off to the side, watching them go through these super long board games for hours at a time. And that's probably what I'll be doing this coming Saturday is prepping something. Probably not filing, so probably assembling Lord of the Rings miniatures, actually. And more bolt action stuff.
That sounds pretty good. I need to go through some of mine and start getting some paint on them. I'm not really sure which ones I'm going to do yet, though, so...
Yeah, I wish that's about all I can do there because you usually end up having to be mobile, or obviously I'm bringing my own lights, my own cords, and everything else. So that the painting stuff, you always have to think, can I be interrupted right at a key moment? When you're prepping, so when you're filing mold lines, if it's like, look, you got to move now, okay, it's not that big a tragedy. And that's actually what I do at the kitchen table when the in-laws are here like this. I can sit there and file miniatures for 3-4 hours and just talk to them. It's actually more interesting doing that than sitting by myself and filing the miniatures.
Yeah.
And when somebody's playing the Firefly game, that is better than watching like a NASCAR race with tons of crashes in it, or one of those like Maury Povich kind of shows, because man, the worst of humanity comes out, baby. So like, you're gonna put the Alliance cruiser on me again, or don't you dare stick those Reavers on me.
That's what happens with Munchkin in this household.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll help you fight that. Oh, wait a minute. Now it's an enraged, impregnated, ancient snail.
Mm-hmm. And there's like 4 more following behind. No thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah. And what is it? The pantyhose of allure or something like that? Or the boots of allure? And then there's like some kind of like happy balloon or something like that. There was like a balloon in Munchkin, right?
I don't know the
balloon.
original Munchkin, to be honest.
I think it had pretty balloons in there. That like distracted the monster or something. But then you would play pretty balloons. And in some ways, it's a little bit like that crazy dating thing we were doing at ReaperCon, where somebody tries to spoil the perfect date for you.
Oh, yeah. That was hilarious.
That got kind of saucy, as you might expect.
Yep.
Well, especially with like 40 people, Because it seemed like that somehow. I don't think we did not get all the way around the table.
Yeah, we did.
No, because no one ever did something for me.
Oh, right.
Well, I think we started with Liz. We never even got to Aaron, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I think it was Kathy was the end.
Yeah. I think it was either Kathy or maybe Izzy was the last person, and never got around to me. Which, if it had gotten around to Aaron and I, that really would have been Armageddon. Because it was bad enough just with us being at the table. Now it would have been us the back to back, the last two people. There would have been fatalities.
That would have been pretty hilarious, actually.
Yeah, that was. Well, that was the nice thing about that new hotel is that not only could you be in a place, but there was you could go buy food, and it was pretty late at night, and it's yeah, let's go get some food, or let's get a beer or a dessert. That was not an option for years.
Yeah, no. Well, and even the other place, that is one thing I missed about that old weird event center, which, Mark, if you had gone last year, you would have just been like, what is this?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It was, we drove in with an Uber, and the Uber's like, is it there? And we're like, I guess so. But there was this Burmese restaurant right next door, and that place was freaking amazing.
Yeah, we ended up at the taco gas station around the corner because they had horchata on tap. So that was the one place we went to because they know I love my horchata.
You can make your own.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to have to just Google a recipe here and start doing that.
Rice with cinnamon, let it soak overnight. You put it in a blender, and then you strain it, and then put almond milk in it. You're done.
Almond milk. Okay, so that's I wasn't quite sure because people are like, well, it's just coconut milk. No, there's not. I don't think there's coconut milk in horchata. Or at least not too much of it.
Not traditional? Yeah. I mean, you could add coconut milk to it, I think. I mean, it would taste a little bit more tropical-y, but...
Yeah, Kathy, she likes using the coconut milk in a lot of things. Actually, we used it in mashed potatoes today because, with the lactose intolerant thing, there was a way to sort of make the mashed potatoes a little bit more on the creamy side without imparting the milk. And this is Models Workshop. It used to be Terrain Workshop. Now it's Recipe Workshop.
Oh yeah,
it's the culinary workshop. Screw all this miniature stuff, baby. It's the height of gastronomy here on Models Workshop.
Yep, definitely. We're big foodies. I mean, I live in the best town to be a foodie. With everything under the sun here.
Yeah, we don't have very many restaurants. There's some really good ones, but not very many up here.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't live. So we used to live in Mesquite, Nevada for a while. There was 7 diners and 4 diners and 8 Mexican places. That's why I will not really eat Mexican food anymore.
Yeah, here, we have Donardo's right next door to the Mexican restaurant, and by a Mexican restaurant I mean a place where the menus are written in Spanish, the sodas in the fridge are Mexican sodas.
Yeah.
The music is Tejano music. There's no American pop music in that jukebox at all, and you can get the chorizo and egg breakfast and everything. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, Kathy hates cilantro, so we don't go there very often.
No.
Well, and it turns out that some folks like too much tomatoes is a bad thing for them to have, even though they might like the taste of it. We don't even have spaghetti as often as we used to. So obviously a lot of things at the Mexican restaurant will be somewhat tomato based.
Yeah. Really? You can't have that many tomatoes?
Well, I think it's called dyspepsia or something like that. And it's tomatoes and onions, especially raw onions, will do that. Like I used to make these deluxe gourmet salads all the time, and she would feel kind of miserable afterwards, and we realized that it was the raw onions and tomatoes in them that was not good, so I'm still making those for me, but I basically have to make the Kathy salad and the Jim salad.
That sucks.
Now, I suppose it's like people that, now if she had known about this years and years ago, it would be different, because I know some people that, what is it, gluten, right? They can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're born with it, they've known that their entire lives, people say, oh, I feel bad eating pizza in front of you, and they say, look, I've never eaten it. It doesn't even look good to me, so eat it fine. You're not upsetting me by eating it. I've never eaten it in my life. So, go ahead, have pizza, guilt-free. I'll just sit here in the corner with my grapes. You guys have fun. No guilt whatsoever.
I guess.
I wonder with ReaperCon, I just hope it doesn't expand too fast, because usually something like this, that word of mouth says, hey, ReaperCon was really, really cool. And I've seen other conventions. Convergence was a convention that in 2003 seemed crowded with 2,000 people there. We went back again in 2015, 2016, and there was 7,000 people in the same hotel.
Holy crap.
Oh, wow.
They actually had tape on the floor that said you have to go in these lines where the tape shows you to go. They actually had hall monitors saying, no, you can only go this way. Turn around and go the other way. They had people basically say, okay, what floor are you on? Okay, you go to that elevator. And then you get on there and you don't even touch the buttons. There's somebody on the elevator pressing the buttons. Because what would happen at this convention, there were so many bodies, the elevators were all broken by Thursday. And when you have 7,000 people in there till Monday, that's less convenient.
Poor planning?
Well, it became so popular, people actually started to make counterfeit tickets to get here. Imagine, ReaperCon becomes so popular, and people are basically coming in with printed tickets or whatever, and every year Reaper has to come up with a new hologram to put on their membership badges. That's the extent of what was going on here, and then the price got more and more expensive. Well, look what happened with Gen Con.
Yeah.
That's the same way. That's gotten insane, where there's 80,000 people in a downtown area that comfortably holds 40. There's just too many bodies in a dealer's room that if you were to start running, it might take you 5 minutes to run across just the dealer's room with nobody inside of it. And that's not counting for all of the other things that are going on in that convention center, in individual hotels. Although ReaperCon, I guess they're going to build... There is, of course, the movie theater across the street.
Yeah, and there's more room there.
And they... Who knows, they may build a secondary hotel. Well, like we talked about there, if you get seriously injured, there's 9 hospitals right around there.
Yeah.
So for people like Aaron, whoever that keeps slicing open their hands, at least there's an emergency room to take them to. I still don't understand how people keep slicing and dicing themselves like that. We've been at this for...
Well, Jim.
Well, it's... Using those jeweler's blocks, those little rubber blocks, there's many times... when you look at those rubber blocks, the cut marks in there and the drill holes, those could be my hands. That's what those are for. And I'll just say oh yeah, there's Aaron with, oh wait, that's not a Band-Aid, that's super glue and thread and fishing line that he's used to retie his 2 fingers onto his hand again. He did that Monday, he cut himself again.
Oh really?
And Liz thought he was joking. He's like, no, what? And she goes, seriously? And he goes, yeah, but it's not as bad as the last one. That's why you guys couldn't tell. And they're like, wait a minute, why is half your camera smudgy? Oh, that's just a bloody fingerprint.
Jesus Christ.
But
Yeah, that last one was pretty bad.
that one, I said, what was he doing? Was he like trying to cut open a safe or something with an X-Acto knife? I think years ago we were working on confrontation figures when, well, they were mostly made out of lead, so they were really soft, and I was trying to cut some holes in the feet for a pin, and the entire leg just broke, and that pin vise ended up in my thumb, like under where the nail is, not like where people would stick the little sticks under your nails, but that other part of it, the cuticle, I guess, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, so I've just injected some lead into my finger, and that's when someone suggested those rubber blocks. They're super cheap. We've got 4 or 5 of them in the house because we keep losing track of them. But yeah, I use razor saws all the time. I mean, not a day goes by that razor saw is not at work. And it's certainly a whole bunch safer using that on a couple of these jeweler's blocks. Especially given you can see these saw marks in the jeweler's block.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea to have.
Yeah, I'll have to look into some of those.
You can just get them on Amazon now. They're typically between $4 and $6 maybe. And some of them are flat and kind of broad, and then other ones are more rectangular shaped and a little bit thicker. And we basically use both. I'll even use it when I'm doing my bases. So if I'm carving up that Sculpey, instead of just basically chopping this stuff in my hands, I'll set it down on the jeweler's block and I'll kind of hack away with my wood carving tools there. Because most people that are carving stuff, well, what do? They've got it set down in some kind of a vise, right? And they got 2 hands on their tool. Or something. Basically, their hands are not in the path of the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what this can help eliminate. Is it gets your hands out of the way of the tools. Well, for us, it was survival. I mean, we do something where we can't paint for 2-3 weeks. That means we're living out on the. I better be really good at terrain, like life-size terrain, taking my foam core and my everything else and making a house for us under the viaduct. So the jeweler's block prevents that kind of 1-to-1 scale terrain building.
Oh boy.
No,
Sorry, I just obscured some detail.
What was? Oh, it was. I think it was Jessica Bathory. She had the thing where the enemy of good was better, and she was doing that on a hangout, and all of a sudden she just disappeared. It's like, what happened to Jessica? I thought maybe her signal had cut out or something like that, but she said, nope, I painted something that was basically almost done, and I said, well, I should add this here, and in her mind, she messed it up, and she was never able to restore it back to that first thing that she liked so much.
Yeah.
And it still bugs her to this day, even though she won with it. It got an award and everything, but still she remembers what it looked like before. So yeah, just never talk about the color purple, I think, around Jessica. Or was it? It was something where it was somewhere she just added that one extra little thing. I have to kind of do that sometimes with Kathy, where she'll say, well, should I bother doing this extra thing? I said, what is that phrase? And she says, yeah, screw it. Not going to bother. It's good enough as it is. That's the other thing when it comes to army painting and stuff, or doing what we're doing. My training was in the advertising industry, where you have to make a $10,000 job look like a $50,000 job, but take only as long as a $3,000 job. And basically it was, that's good enough. I mean, that you'd love to do that extra little detail thing, but it is just not going to show up. You would basically have to give them your magnifier light and point out that thing to say, look at this really cool thing that I added. It took me 20 minutes to add this on. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? So you realize after a while that at a certain point it just becomes too minuscule a thing for the person to notice, and unless they want to spend $200 extra, it's just not. You just have to kind of control that impulse.
Yeah. But cat, no, don't. My cat's bothering me, as always. But I was just gonna say we've hit as of recording time, 2.5 hours. So I think it's about a good time to wrap things up.
Especially since we've had a casualty along the way, it seems.
Yep.
See, people were injured in this podcast.
No, their feelings were not hurt, though. But it's okay. But yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. It was great having Mark on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. Yeah.
And check out his Facebook page, Frozen Ninja 3D. Do you have any other websites or anything you'd like to plug?
I'm at FrozenNinja3D.com and at Instagram and Twitter at FrozenNinja3D.
Sweet.
Okie dokes. And we'll include links and stuff on the bottom of the podcast in the description. And yeah, thanks for joining us. Look out for we'll probably hype it back up again, but look for Mark's Kickstarter. I was like, I forgot the word. Look for Mark's Kickstarter, and also for Heriberto's Kickstarter coming up. Both of them are coming up in October, and they have some great models to show you guys. So make sure to check them out and let us know if you need anything else. You can reach us at all the known. you guys already know where to find us. But yeah, if you have any people that are getting new into the hobby and whatnot, make sure you reach out to us. We have, different, so many places to send you guys, especially, people like Jim and a lot of great resources out there. So reach out to us. We don't bite much, but thanks for joining us. I can't remember anything else at the moment, so bye.
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 Take care.